So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of the Western BCP Planning Committee. Before we go any further, I'll ask the Democratic Services Officer, Jill Holyoke, to read out the housekeeping notices and tell us about any apologies for absence received and substitute members for this meeting.
Thank you. Please note this meeting is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the website for a minimum of 6 months. The meeting may also be recorded or streamed for live or subsequent broadcast by members of the public, although ultimate discretion in this matter lies with the Chair. For those in the room, please note if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point at the War Memorial in the gardens opposite the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum. Mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. For everyone in the room, this includes turning off mics and turning down the volume down completely on your laptops. Thank you. Moving on to apologies. Apologies have been received from Councillor Brian Hitchcock, Councillor Kate Salmon and Councillor Cameron Adams. Item 2, substitute members. Councillor Joe Salmon is here for Councillor Kate Salmon today. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the election of chair. So for this, I will hand over to the Vice Chair, Councillor Joe Clements, to handle this matter.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take any nominations for chair for this committee. Thank you very much.
I'd like to nominate Marion Le Pevin.
Lovely, thank you very much. And I'd like to second that. Are there any other nominations at all? No?
Duly elected.
Okay. Marion Le Pevin is duly elected as chair of the Planning Committee, Western Planning Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So now we move on to the election of Vice Chair. Currently, it's Councillor Joe Clements, and I'd like to nominate her for this coming year as well. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Jill. Any other nominations? No? So, Joe?
Lovely,
Thank
you very much.
Welcome back. Thank you, same team. Thank you very much. So now we move on to the agenda proper. Before we move any further, I'll just ask everybody to identify themselves for the people present and particularly the people watching and listening online. So, as you gather, my name is Marion Le Pevin. I'm now chair again of this committee, and I'll move around the circle. First of all, we'll talk to councillors and then we'll come on to officers.
Okay. Councillor Joe Clements, Penhill Ward and Vice Chair of this committee.
Councillor Michelle Dower, Kinston Ward and member of this committee.
Julian Martin, Boscombe West Ward and member of this committee.
Joe Salmon, Moordown Ward. I'm subbing for Kate Salmon, member of this committee.
Councillor Chapman Law, Alderney and Bourne Valley, member of the committee.
Councillor Peter Sidaway, Broadstone.
Councillor John Challoner, Camford Cliffs Ward.
Thank you very much. I didn't say I'm Newtown and Heatherlands Ward. Now we move on to the officers present.
I'm Lena Kotova, I'm the Conservation Officer.
Thank you.
Monika Kwiatkowska, Team Leader.
Katie Harrington, Development Management Manager.
And we also have a couple of officers who will be joining us online. The presenting officer for this case, it will be joining us online. And we've already heard from Jill Holyoke, who is taking the minutes and generally making sure we do everything properly. So, are there any declarations of interest from members? Thank you. If anything occurs to you during the meeting, obviously mention it at that point, should it arise. The next item is number 6, the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting we held, the last meeting, which I'm very surprised to find was all the way back on the 3rd of April. So is everybody happy that these are a correct record of our proceedings on that occasion? Everybody happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of nods, no hands up, but lots of nods. So thank you, everybody. Those are agreed. I'll sign them before the end of the meeting. And now we move on to the schedule of planning applications. We only have one before us today, 8A. We'll start off with the presenting officer who is online. And then we'll move on from there to questions and debate and speak presentations from the floor from the registered speakers. So the only application we're looking at is 106 Panorama Road, and we have the case officer online. That's Babatunde Arabasola. Sorry for murdering your name. And I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. The application before us today is for 106 Panorama Road. And just before, if I may, just to bring our attention to some of the updates and changes that have been made to the report after the report was published. Additional consulting representations were received from the BCP tree officer. The tree officer further provided further comments on the application, specifically regarding the use of a crane on site, the timing of various elements of the development, and the phasing of works. Following a review of the submitted information, the tree officer advised that the site general arrangement drawing by Calcinotto and construction methods and transport management plan by G3 Limited sufficiently detail the sequence of events. On this basis, the tree officer has confirmed no objection and the development can proceed without adverse impact on important trees on site. Accordingly, the local authority no longer wishes to pursue the second reason for refusal previously outlined in the officer's report. Secondly, it relates to a policy context. The site lies within the area of Sandbanks Peninsula Neighborhood Plan, which was adopted on the 23rd July 2024. This neighborhood plan was made shortly after the application was validated in June 2024, forms part of the development plan. The report in paragraph 28 erroneously states that the plan is imagined. To be clear, the neighborhood plan has been adopted, and that paragraph should read as follows. Hence, the proposal is not deemed compliant with Section 72 of the Planning Act 1990, paragraphs 205, 206, 208, and 212 of the MPPF, Policy PP30 Heritage Assets of the Adopted Pool Local Plan, the Sandbanks, CACMP Part 5, and the Adopted Sandbanks Peninsula Neighborhood Plan, which support the preservation and enhancement of buildings of local interest or archaeological significance of their built heritage and social history. In addition, the below should be listed under the relevant policies as supplementary planning guidance, the Sandbanks Peninsula Neighborhood Plan, July 2024. I'll just briefly mention the policies that are relevant to the application we are considering today. Sand 1, landscape character. Sand 2, views. Sand 3, trees and gardens. Sand 4, biodiversity. Sand 5, design. Sand 6, beaches, open spaces, and arbor. And the last one of the supplementary planning guidance will be shoreline character areas, which is considered to be relevant in this case. If that's okay with Chair, I can proceed with my presentation now.
Yes, please, if you would.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to share my screen. Thank you very much.
Yes, we can see that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The application before all relates to application site 106 Panorama Road Pool. And the proposal description is demolition of existing property and erection of a replacement property, incorporating improvement works to the sea wall. The next slide, which you can see here, shows the extent of the conservation area which the application site lies within. The red line shows the extent of the conservation area along the Panorama Road. The next slide shows the area view. This is the application site, and these are the trees and plants within the site. The next slide shows the red line boundary of the site, shows the size of the plot. This photograph shows the view from Panorama Road, which is limited. This photograph is a pre-existing photograph. It shows the rear elevation of the property. This is what you're likely to see from the arbor. But this is pre-existing, not there's been alteration to the application property today. This is another view photograph showing the view from the arbor. It's another photograph giving a context of what the view from the sea area. This current photographs show the existing state of the property. There's been a single-story rear extension added to the application property via permitted development rights. This next slide shows the location plan. So you can see the red line boundary showing the site and various development within the site. This is the proposed layout, shows the extensive of the vegetation and the property. And just before I go on, the replacement dwelling will comprise a two-story dwelling with basement. And this slide before us shows this is the ground floor element of the proposed development. And the next slide is the first floor, the proposed first floor, and the proposed roof plan. The next slide shows the basement. This is the front elevation, proposed front elevation. This is the proposed rear elevation. This photograph is an artistic impression given us submitted by the applicant to show how the property will look like if it's built. This is the view of what it's going to look like when you view it from the sea, from the arbor point. But this is an artistic impression. And the applicant has requested that this photograph be shown. This is the existing property. This is what it looks like. This is the view of the property as it is today. And this is the artistic impression of what it will look like if the property is built. The main issue with this application is whether the proposal will preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the sandbanks conservation area and whether it will preserve the setting of non-designated heritage asset. It should be noted that the property at 106 Panorama Road has been recognized in the Sandbanks Conservation Area Character Appraisal and Management Plan as a positive building contributing to the character and appearance of the conservation area. The document defined the application property as follows: a traditional cottage and last building remaining from the North Haven Point estate. The plot has heavily treed and exposed position at the mouth of the arbor entrance, steeply pitched roof with dormer windows which continue over an open porch on the arbor side elevation. Grounds are informal and covered by three major groups of trees which surround and form a dense backdrop to the house and create a distinctive endpoint for the conservation area. The identification of key buildings allowed them to be recognized for their architectural and historic interest and contribution to the character and appearance of the conservation area. There are three categories of protection for historic buildings and structures. Some buildings in the borough of Poole are protected from demolition by locally agreed designation as unlisted, though significant buildings in conservation area. The significance, just to highlight the significance of the conservation area and the application building. Special interest of the conservation area is a combination of buildings, streets, spaces, and history as defined by Historic England. Significant and special historic and architectural interest of sandbanks lies in the surviving examples of quality pre-World War II properties in an exceptional coastal setting, most of which with a verdant backdrop and benefiting from harbor views. The buildings along Panorama Road exemplifying the character and appearance of the CA are well detailed, Edwardian, art and craft style dwellings in sylvan plots. The significance of the application building itself, as a result of its age, very early Edwardian, one of the oldest in the area, is a reflection of the development of sandbanks, and by reason of this, a last building remaining from the North Haven Point estate, as mentioned in the conservative appraisal document. The application property makes a positive contribution to the conservation area and can be considered a non-designated heritage asset. In addition, despite alterations, the building retained enough features of its original and craft-influenced design, well-proportioned form, steep slate roof, multi-pane side encasement, characteristics of the conservation area for it to be appreciable. This was also agreed by the heritage statement submitted by the applicant on page 16. I have outlined above the importance and significance of the application property to the conservation area. As a result, the removal of the building that makes a positive contribution to the conservation area will cause harm to the conservation area and undermine part of its significance. Impact of loss of building. It will erode the special interest of the sandbanks conservation area as an area encompassing buildings from the earliest development of sandbanks, contrary to legislative and policy requirement. Furthermore, the submitted heritage statement by the applicant agreed that the proposal will result in less than substantial harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area through the total loss of a positively contributing building. Yet the requirement of the NPPF is to avoid, minimize, or justify the harm have not been met by the applicant, as no alternative has been put forward which will see the building retained. The limited visibility of the bungalow from the public realm does not mean the loss of the building will not be harmful, as private views from the neighboring land will be adversely affected. With regards to the extension erected utilizing permitted right, it should be noted that this should not justify the further erosion of the conservation area, which will be caused by the proposal to demolish the existing property. The demolition of existing dwelling will be harmful to the conservation and appearance of the conservation area by reason of a loss of its significance. I attach a substantial weight against the loss of the building. There will be additional harm to the character and appearance of this part of the conservation area from the proposed replacement dwelling, which I attribute a moderate weight. In the overall balance, I give these matters collectively substantial weight against the proposal. I found the harmful impact on the character and appearance of the area will fail to preserve or enhance the significance of the conservation area as a whole. Furthermore, the proposal will harm the setting and significance of the locally listed buildings, given that the harmful effect will be localized. The proposal will cause less than substantial harm to the significance of the designated assets, to which a considerable importance and weight is being apportioned. In such circumstance, the framework requires that less than substantial harm be weighed against any public benefits. In this regard, while the proposal will provide a dwelling in a sustainable location, it will replace an existing dwelling and will not therefore add to the supply of housing within the borough. The proposal will provide a larger, newer, modern family dwelling, make a more efficient use of the site, and provide some economic benefits during and post-construction. However, this benefit will be very modest, given that the proposal is for a single dwelling and given that the existing dwellings are habitable and adds to the range and size of dwellings in the immediate area. While the proposal will be less vulnerable to flood risk due to its raised ground floor and mitigation measures put in place, this will be a private benefit for the occupiers. Taking such matters into account, individually or together, the public benefit are not sufficient to outweigh the less than substantial harm to the significance of the CA and setting of the non-designated heritage asset that has been identified, and great weight afforded to the asset conservation. In conclusion, the development will have a significant harmful effect and fail to preserve or enhance the character or appearance of the sandbanks conservation area, and fail to preserve the setting of the non-designated heritage asset. As such, it would conflict with local policy PP 30, NP policy SAND 5, the aims of which I have outlined above. In addition, the proposal is contrary to policy PP 27, that amongst other things, seek a good standard of design and development that reflect or enhances local patterns of development and neighboring buildings. Thank you very much. That comes to the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to representations. There are no objectors registered to speak. We have two people here who are registered to speak on behalf of the applicant. One is the applicant himself, and one is Natalie Aldrich, the heritage consultant. So I'll ask them to speak now. Could you come to the mic? And
Thank you, Chair.
I will find 5 minutes between them.
Just while they're doing that, can we ask Babatunde, are you okay to display the applicant's image again that was in your presentation slides?
Yes, I'll do that, sure.
Thanks.
So we'll just wait for there's the image. So, reminder, you have 5 minutes between you. How you split it between you is up to you, but I am strict on timing.
Good morning, councillors. I'm speaking on behalf of the Heritage team at Tor & Co. Our work was led by Dr. James Weir, full member of the Institute of Historic Building Conservation, who could not be here today, but who has worked locally for more than 10 years, including as a consultant for the former Bournemouth Borough Council. There are two heritage assets at the centre of this application.
Sorry, can I stop you? It's difficult to hear you. You're speaking very quietly, and very quickly, actually. I know you want to get as much as possible into your time, but...
Oh, thank you. Hope that's better. There are two heritage assets at the centre of this application, the Sandbanks Conservation Area and 106 Panorama Road itself. The conservation area was designated in 2003 and an appraisal was published in 2009. To our knowledge, there has been no formal review of the conservation area since that time, and therefore no current assessment of what makes it special after more than 2 decades of change. For this reason, we undertook a standalone review, which was submitted as part of the application and was not refuted or criticised by your officers in any way. The review identified 4 key elements which define the special interest of Sandbanks Conservation Area: its distinctive landform and remnant dune landscape, its coastal setting and visual relationship with the harbour, the strong presence of woodland settings for large dwellings, and the sinuous road layout and associated boundary walls. As this list suggests, buildings are not a defining element of the conservation area. They are mostly either modern or heavily altered versions of the originals. As such, subject of course to design quality and maintaining the defining elements just mentioned, buildings can in principle change and be replaced without harming the conservation area. Turning to 106 Panorama Road itself, it is acknowledged that it has some heritage interest meriting consideration in planning decisions. However, the building is not an exemplar of an original Edwardian dwelling. Constructed as ancillary accommodation, it has experienced extension and modernisation internally since the 1950s. The original form and context of the building has been lost since the mid-20th century. The existing building does not illustrate any defining characteristic of the conservation area. Its replacement will not, when assessed against the conservation area as a whole, as per NPPF paragraph 220, result in anything more than minor harm. In this case, the scheme would deliver a highly sustainable building of exceptional design quality, a cut above many of the identikit modern dwellings which characterised other plots on the peninsula. The building would not affect the defining elements of the conservation area, and with its design integrated into the woodland setting, would it provide enhancement to that setting. Furthermore, the scheme will replace the tired and unsightly rusting metal and concrete sea wall. Rather than replace it with the harsh engineered solution we typically see, this proposal is for a naturalistic living sea wall and dunescape shore, thus enhancing an identified and yet deteriorating key view into the conservation area from the harbour. The heritage and public benefits of this scheme's proposed replacement dwelling and sea defence wall outweigh the loss of significantly altered Edwardian ancillary building. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tom Glanfield. I grew up by the sea in a family passionate about sailing. My brother is Joe Glanfield, the sailing Olympic coach now, and for years we sailed past the property I now own, and it always saddened me to see it falling into such disrepair. I never thought I'd be in one day a position to own it. My parents are a modest social worker and health visitor, and I started my recruitment business with a graduate loan and built it through hard graft, as my dad would say. My most successful brand is Piper Mannix, which became a global leader in renewable energy recruitment, driven from my passion for the environment. I sold the business 3 years ago, and now I have the time, energy, and means to give this project everything it needs. I'm not a developer, I'm not someone who's flipping this property for profit, and I'm not here with a trust fund. I'm a family man who's generally fallen in love with this unique plot. My partner and I, along with our 3 boys, care deeply about preserving the woodland, the coastline, and the natural beauty of the area. The current house is falling apart. With a registered F energy rating, it still uses oil heating, and the harbour wall is literally collapsing into the sea. Despite modest improvements under permitted development, it remains damp, cold, and no matter what I do to the existing bungalow, it won't offer the opportunities like a new construction would do to future sustainability or flood resistance for the next 100 years. So I set out to create something better. I asked the architects to design an eco-friendly, near off-grid woodland home using local natural materials that will allow the landscape and not the house to take centre stage. That will be exemplar to the whole area in terms of sustainability and design. We brought together local firms Marlowe and Arc, and the result is a beautiful design that's already been nominated for a national award. Incredibly, it's received over 30 letters of support and no objections, something I'm really touched by, having only lived in the area for a few years. As part of the project, we're also rebuilding the harbour wall using a pioneering Australian living wall system that encourages marine life to thrive, transforming a rusting barrier into a biodiverse feature that blends into the coastline. And with the award-winning landscape and designer Andrew Sturgeon, we're rewilding the grounds using local stone, sand, and native planting to reflect the natural shoreline. We believe this is a project the community can be proud of, something not only beautiful, sustainable, and fitting for such a special place, but also exemplar for the area in terms of sustainability, biodiversity, and design. Thank you very much. And I'm glad my son kept quiet.
Brilliant timing. Just made it.
Yeah.
Well, slightly over. So thank you very much. If you'd like to go back to your seats. And we have no ward councillors registered to speak, although we do have one on the panel today. So he will no doubt want to express views at some stage, or maybe not, I don't know. So, members, we turn to questions about the application, about what you've heard, what you've seen, or maybe what you haven't heard and seen. I've got two, Councillor Clements and then Councillor Salmon and then Councillor Martin. That's three, I know.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask, in the presentation, there was reference to, maybe not the impact on, but certainly reference to locally listed buildings. And I wondered where the nearest locally listed building is to the site.
Sorry? Right. Could the Heritage Officer help on this, or?
No, just a list of questioning.
Yes, yeah.
Benny, I've got a plan here.
I don't know whether you heard that, Babatunde. Is it possible to blow up your presentation to fill the screen?
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Okay. Sorry, bear with me. I've just got the plan in front of me and I can't share my screen.
That's still not any different to mine.
Babatunde, can you put it into presentation mode, please?
Okay, yes, I can do that. Okay, 1 second.
Can I answer your question in the meeting?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, go.
It's 84 Panorama Road. So, how many houses?
Yeah.
But don't make me do maths. About like 3, 4 houses.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. 84 Panorama Road is the nearest locally listed building. The next one is the old Coast Guard station.
Oh, so following on from 84, is 84 listed because I know that John Lennon's aunt lived. John Lennon purchased one of the properties for his aunt to live in. Is that why it's listed 84, which is different to it being a conservation area?
Can I just, sorry,
Yeah.
keep forgetting. Can I just clarify? It's not listed, it's locally listed because, yeah, locally listed, it's a different, well, it's a lower grade. So when you've got locally listed building, basically same requirements apply as to when you need planning permission and whatnot. You don't need like listed building consent application, for example, to alter it. 84 Panorama Road was put, can you all hear me fine? 84 Panorama Road was put on the local list because it's one of the surviving Edwardian villas. And yes.
Looking out the reason because I know
Historic and architectural reasons because it's quite in good condition, quite intact architecturally.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Salmon.
So I've got two questions. First of all, on the heritage impact and the justification. So I think it's probably a question for Babatunde. I hope I'm saying that right. Just to be clear, the property that's being knocked down is a non-designated heritage asset. And so for this to be approved, the applicant would have to justify its total demolition. Am I right in thinking that's not been shown at all? There's no balance here. This has only come in because of the number of comments in support rather than it being finely balanced and us weighing anything up.
Yes, that is correct, sir. Yeah, we've received more than 30 letters of support, and there's not been any justification apart from the fact that the the applicant need, like the applicant have said earlier, that it needs refurbishment. It's not currently habitable, but looking at the property, I think it's yes. There's no justification have been submitted why the total demolition of the property should be acceptable.
Okay, and then my second question was on the tree protection orders in place. I just wanted to check, is it that there are tree protection orders in place and there's simply not a plan currently to deal with those with the works?
Okay. There are tree protection orders on most of the trees on site, and the arboricultural impact assessment report submitted has provided detailed and comprehensive mitigation measures on how to protect most of the trees. There will only be 2 trees to be removed, and this is due to their condition. And apart from those 2 trees that are in poor condition, the other trees are going to be fully protected from any damage during construction.
Sorry, I'd just like to add that there was 2 reasons for refusal. That second one relating to impact on trees has now been resolved, so there's only the heritage impacts.
So that has been resolved, but that's not in the report in front of us today.
It's
or
in
have
the
I misread my
supplementary.
report? It's in the supplementary, which I've missed because I'm looking at it online. Okay.
Okay, Councillor Martin, have you still got a question, or was that your previous one? Right, okay, carry on.
Yeah, 4 questions. So, how many beds are there in the current house? The current, the old house that's going to be demolished. How many bedrooms?
Because the proposal is for demolition, the existing layout was I can't remember the total amount. I think it's about 3 to 4 bed house.
Okay. 4. Thanks. Thank you. And it's going to be replaced with a 5-bedroom. Is that correct? It's 5-bedroom.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And okay. The applicant mentioned the living conditions in the house. He said it was damp. I just wondered what the actual condition of the house is. It's damp and cold? Has it got damp issues? And what is the current energy rating of the building? What's the current energy rating of the old building to be demolished? F.
Yeah, we were told F in the presentation, but I don't know whether that's been confirmed independently. Has it?
Yeah. Well, that's outside of planning. I haven't got that information right in front of me.
But it's just that it's an old dilapidated. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
weigh up what's the anticipated energy rating of the new building going to be?
Probably C, B, but
but this is not something that we were looking at through the planning system.
No, I do appreciate that, but it's you're making a decision. Yeah. Just a little question. Is the boathouse going to be coming down? There's a little boathouse. Is that going to be demolished as well?
Based on the submitted plan, no.
Because it's not on the new picture, Because there's a garage right onto where the road is, and then there's a little boathouse over. I just wondered, is that going as well?
The red brick one is still there, but I agree, there's another one that isn't.
Yeah.
So are you referring to?
There's one with a jetty, not a jetty, but it's
that one. Yes,
that one. Yeah. Is that coming down as well?
Based on the submitted plan, no, I don't think so, because you can see this is the proposed layout. They've retained, as shown on the submitted plan, those buildings are like that because they will be retained. They're not coming down. So.
Yeah, I just wondered. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That's all.
That's it.
Just answered that incorrectly, I believe.
It's on. It seems to be on the plan, but it's not on the CGI.
But the applicant has just said completely the opposite. So I know he's not supposed to speak at this point, but we'd be wrong to ignore the fact he's just said that.
Okay, so we've got Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. First question. One of the statements that our officer has made is with regards to harmful views of the new development from neighbouring properties. Do we have any proof or indications of this, given the level of tree cover and trees within the site, as you can see clearly from the overheads?
Can you help us out, Babatunde?
Yeah, the point I was making with that statement was that there's been the fact that the property will not, we have a limited visibility from the public realm, does not mean that the total loss or demolition of the building will not be harmful, as because by totally removing the building, it would diminish how the conservation area is being experienced by the neighboring property. There are still views glimpsed from the neighboring property. I don't think that the total loss of the property because of its limited view justifies the total demolition of the building.
Sorry, just to jump in and clarify that with heritage assets such as conservation areas, you don't have to be able to see it for harm to occur. And I think that's what Babatunde was trying to get to.
Can I just come in? Because I imagine the bit Councillor Challoner is referring to is what's on the screen now, the first of the NBs. The limited visibility of the bungalow from the public realm does not mean the loss of the building would not be harmful, as private views from neighbouring land would be adversely affected. I assume that's the bit you're referring to. Yeah.
So the thing is, as you also, yes, from the public realm, the visibility of the bungalow is fairly limited. And I know that sometimes people focus a bit too much on that. But in this case, that is quite logical because the idea was, the historic idea was to benefit from the sea views. So hence why there is a little bit of tree protection. But the thing is, yes, the building could be perceived from next door, which is, I suspect, 108 Panorama Road, from Brownsea Island, which might be perceived as sort of private land, from jetties. So when the new development will be viewed from these vantage points, this is when harm would occur because the new building would not be representative of the character and appearance of the sandbanks conservation area. I'm talking only about the conservation area here, not the peninsula as a whole. Well, the existing bungalow is a representative of this very early stage of development of sandbanks, which is protected via conservation area. And I hope I've answered your question.
Not particularly, but we'll go with it.
Is that all, or have you ever?
No, I have others. I have other points as well.
Carry on then.
So my next question, and I haven't finished yet, is within the conservation area then, how many properties have been developed and in a similar style? Or perhaps even just a more modern style rather than of a traditional build?
I do not have the record right in front of me, but one thing that I would like to point out to us is that recently we received an appeal decision relating to 13 Coast Guard, which is within the conservation area, and it was proposed to be demolished, but the inspector concluded that the total removal of the building, given its historical relevance within the conservation area, will be harmful. So to answer your question, I do not have the total figure of building that has been demolished within it and demolished and rebuilt in this fashion. But one that, like I said, is that the total removal, 13 Coast Guard is a good example of the point we're trying to highlight here today, that the total removal of an historical significant building would be harmful to the conservation area. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Okay.
Is it okay if I speak as well?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the proposed design, right? You're asking
Yeah.
how many buildings are in the proposed design. So there aren't any, I'd say. There are a couple of buildings with flat roofs on Old Colesgarth Road. Why can't I never say it? But they're not with, for example, so much glazing. They're quite different, I'd say. They're more sort of more seasidey with some very faint, for example, like Art Deco seaside influences. So there isn't another house like this. But can I just clarify that the issue we're looking at is more the loss of the existing building rather than what's proposed. That's where the harm is stemming from. And if I can just point out that the applicant's heritage consultant, or rather the heritage statement submitted by the applicant side, do agree that there would be harm, and that was stated by Ms. Aldrich as well, that there would be harm stemming from the loss of the existing building.
Well, carry on.
And actually, hopefully the questions do have relevance in terms of their entirety. So, and this does kind of lead on to the next point, is I really would like to know exactly what it is that we're aiming to preserve on this site. You know, we have, and I'm not trying not to turn this into a debate item, but we have an old, crumbling, unremarkable building. I really would like some real detail around what we're trying to preserve here, rather than preserving for preservation's sake, because I'm struggling to get my head around the real value there, other than we're sticking a line in the sand.
Do you have a time limit on? I mean, I won't go on for hours, but should I?
We are in the privileged position of having no time limit. But I might, if you're waffling, I'll cut you off.
That's fine. So the thing is, as Babatunde explained, that building is one of the very first buildings on the peninsula. There is a strong historic value in the building. I must point out that, again, the submitted heritage statement also says that the building is considered to have high aesthetic value because of its legible arts and crafts design, which I do appreciate has been slightly reduced by this extension, but as per the NPPF, deliberate neglect or damage cannot be taken into consideration when making a decision. So we've got the historic illustrative value of, a very first generation building. Also an associative value to a larger estate called North Haven Point, which was occupied by the descendants of shipping family called the Bowring family. And it has got, in my view, communal value because it does contribute to the history of sandbanks. And again, I must point out that the heritage statement does conclude, as this has been my conclusion as well, that the building meets the requirements to be considered a non-designated heritage asset. So that's page 17. So there isn't any dispute there as to whether the building in itself is a heritage asset or whether it contributes to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And I believe that Ms. Aldrich also said, oh, we're talking about two heritage assets here. 106 as a non-designated heritage asset, as an asset in itself, and the conservation area as well. And yeah, in terms of whether it's dilapidated, again, we can't take this into account, and that's as per the NPPF, and it hasn't been put in front of us. No information has been put in front of us as to why it can't be refurbished. There are older buildings that have been able to be refurbished and to increase their energy efficiency values. I know that, again, that's not something we can look at, but I can see that councillors are interested in this point.
Thank you. Any more, John? Thank you very much. Michelle. Councillor Dyer, sorry.
Dara. I've got a few. Some of them Councillor Challoner's raised already, but I want to reiterate those questions. There's some confusion about whether the boathouse is staying or not. The applicant has stated that it will be removed. I would be concerned about that. So that would be something, because it's not in the plans, it's not clear. My question is, there's been quite a lot of debate and discussion about the actual existing house. So at this moment in time, it's dilapidated, it's falling apart. I know we're not supposed to be looking at that stuff. So how would that actually, we've had no protests or objections from the neighbours. So one of the statements is that the reason why we need to keep it is because it's the neighbours can actually look down and see it. It's a view that they have, but they haven't objected to any changes. So I'm wondering, what do we need to do to preserve the building to make sure that we can keep it, and whose responsibility would that be?
So I'm not sure who can help us on this one.
I'll take the stand.
Okay.
Sorry, very selfish of me.
Now, should I take on the boathouse issue?
Okay, you go first.
The question regarding the boathouse is only material for this form for the committee if it has a material bearing on termination of this application. And as far as I can see, I don't think it has. So whether or not it's removed is not before us to decide. And in terms of views aren't material to planning. So whether or not neighbour can see it because it's a view to be seen is not what we can consider. What we can consider is what impact that has on the general character of the area, the conservation area.
Thank you, Katie. I wanted to clarify that bit as well. I think we spoke about views. Just to clarify that it's not only views from the public realm that need to be taken into account, because more often than not, people just focus on that, as I said earlier. Oh, it's not visible from the road, so it's absolutely fine because we can see it. But then again, you can say that about maybe more than half of the houses in Branksome Park. That does not mean that they don't contribute to the character and appearance of the area. Anyway, in terms of your question, so when we've got dilapidated houses and it's known that they have fallen into disrepair, it's the NPPF that says, and that's paragraph 209, where there is evidence of deliberate neglect, that the deteriorated state of the heritage asset should not be taken into account. In terms of who is responsible to prevent this from happening or to stop this from progressing, that's on the owner. And if, let's say, the house or a certain element of the house is beyond repair, then we need the justification as to why we can't proceed, let's say, with the refurbishment of the building and a replacement is necessary. In this case, we don't have the evidence as to why the building cannot be retained, refurbished, maybe extended sympathetically, in terms of, any alterations that are subject to planning permission. Obviously, something has already been implemented, but as we stated, it's permitted development, and if it has been harmful, again, we cannot take this into account.
Councillor Dyer, is that all?
Thank you, yes, it is.
Right. And now we come on to Councillor Clement. Oh, Councillor Salmon.
So I just want to check, because I've been somewhat confused by John and Michelle's questions. I want to make absolutely sure I've understood how we are applying the NPPF. So, because we've had questions about, can you view the house, what state it's in, and if it's genuinely a heritage asset and all of that, based on whether John Lennon's mum lived there or something. Is it the case that there is no balance here, there is no debate? It doesn't matter if we think it's dilapidated or not, it doesn't matter if we think people can view it or not. The NPPF says that the only reason you will be able to demolish this building is if you can give a clear justification that there's no alternative, and that's simply not happened with this application.
So if I could jump in now. So the actual paragraph we need to look at closely, consider is paragraph 215 of the NPPF, which states, where a development proposal will lead to a less than substantial harm to the significance of the designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal. Now, officers have weighed that the proposal would result in less than substantial harm, although higher up that less than substantial harm. And we have been debating the significance of that designated heritage asset. The question in consideration is whether this harm is outweighed by the public benefits of the proposal.
Carry on, Councillor Salmon.
Just wanted to ask, in terms of public benefits, for the only benefits that have been identified in this report, if I'm correct, are the strengthening of the flood defences, and that is technically being classified as a private benefit as it doesn't have any knock-on effect. So it is essentially going, we are weighing up the harm against the benefit of the flood defences. That's the key question that we'll be debating when we get to the debate.
Okay, Councillor Clements.
Got what I wanted to say now. Yeah, so this building is a heritage asset because it falls within a conservation area. So if this building were outside, say 200 or 300 yards up the road, would it then not be a heritage asset?
So it's been recognized by both sides that the house can be considered a heritage asset in itself.
Okay, so regardless of where it was on Panorama Road, you would still consider it to be a heritage asset?
Yes, but obviously then if an application came in, there would be slightly different policies and legislation.
So it's not just because it's in the conservation area then? That's just a kind of add-on? Is it the conservation bit?
I'm getting lots of nods on my
That's all
right.
right, that's all I wanted to know.
Which came first, the chicken?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
And Councillor Sidaway.
I have a few questions, probably based on one that isn't, but most are based on the answers that have been given. On the images, I don't think we've taken any of our own, have we? So the only vaguely current one, I think, is the one on screen. When was that taken, the before picture? How old is it?
If I'm correct, it was part of the original application. I would say 2024 because 2024.
Yeah, so about a year ago-ish.
Okay, thank you. I guess what I was trying to look at was the fact that the years of things that have happened when maybe we didn't debate it in the way we're debating it now or have the rules we've got now and permitted development have turned what might have been something that you would have said had some historic value to something that doesn't really look like it has. But we haven't taken enough photos of it, which is a bit of a shame. But I think what I was hearing there was we're not supposed to take that into account, the permitted development. Is that correct?
Are you referring to the single-story rear extension? Yes. Yes. We're not saying we shouldn't take it into account, but because the single-story extension is an addition to the existing property. But the proposal before us today is to totally remove or demolish the entire property.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, that's it.
Kalina.
Yeah, come on in.
Points. So with regards to images, so that image of the front elevation that was taken the other day, so that was taken by me.
Okay.
So I suspect that's the most recent photo. And I suspect if I were 6'2", you'd probably see a bit more, but I'm only 5'5", so this is what I could see. With regards to the permitted development, we can't take it into account. And again, if we consider that this permitted development has caused some damage, as I say, the MPPF states any deliberate damage cannot be taken into account when making a decision. Obviously, when it comes to schemes that can be subject to a planning permission application. So I hope that's clarified things.
My probably my last question then for now. If it's so important as the first building on the peninsula, why did nobody ever list it?
So first of all, it's not the first one. I believe the first one is probably the old Coast Guard station, so the cottages up on the peninsula. It's one of the first ones. It's, you know, from the turn of the 20th century. The other thing is, it's quite difficult to meet the national requirements for listing. So, you know, you need quite substantial historic, let's say, historic associative value, and the architecture needs to be quite intact to meet that. As we can see, yes, it has been altered, and also we've lost the main house. So why nobody listed both of them before the main house was demolished, I can't tell you.
And so, but it is quite a long way down the scale of protection, isn't it? Because it's not locally listed either.
The thing is, again, there is confusion about that. So if you say non-designated heritage asset and locally listed, they're on the same level. So positive bearing in a conservation area is still considered a non-designated heritage asset in terms of the MPPF, so that paragraph that Katie mentioned, and in terms of the pool local plan. And it's not low because it does sit in a conservation area, and you've got legislation saying you need to pay special regard to the desirability to preserve or enhance the conservation area.
Okay, thank you.
Which is something, for example, that wouldn't apply if, let's say, it sat outside the conservation area, going back to your question, Councillor.
Okay, we've had a lot of questions, more than we usually get at this stage. Are we ready to move on to the debate? I think we probably are. Right, who wants to open up? Councillor Salmon, hotly pursued by Councillor Martin and I think Councillor Challoner.
So, Chair, I like this application. I like the people who've brought it. I think they've presented it well. And I'm going to be honest, I don't get particularly sentimental about old buildings and preserving them. I'm much more I'm much more function over form. That said, I recognise my personal preferences don't have any place in this committee at all when it comes to making planning decisions. The preservation of historical and characterful buildings is something that's absolutely enshrined in planning policy and whatnot. Our role on this committee isn't going to be to vote based on our tastes or local popularity or what we like, all of that. It's to apply planning policy fairly, consistently, you know, sticking to all the rules without bending them when it takes our fancy. So on that basis, this application should clearly be refused. I'd like to propose it for refusal.
So before we go any further with any more speaking, any more discussion, is anyone able to second that motion?
But it is for refusal, isn't it? It is for refusal. He said he wants to move. Oh, he's moving.
Sorry, I don't see there's any discussion here. The officers have made it absolutely crystal clear. This is something that needs to be refused under the NPPF. There are no grounds to overturn it.
Oh well.
Councillor Sidaway.
I think there are grounds in terms of we're really turning it down under paragraph 215 of the NPPF. I think was read out to us, and it says talks about less than substantial harm, which that is debatable. I think that's the issue. I think is that the words of that clause are worth a look to see if it's debatable as to whether it has been interpreted correctly in this instance. I'm not saying whether I think it has or hasn't, but I think the words of that clause are vague enough for us to discuss it, given the things that have been said around the table that say it's an unremarkable building, and we are, as John said, you know, we're in danger of doing something just because the rules says we should. And while sometimes that's a good thing to do, in this case, I think it's worth discussing that. I understand what Joe is saying, but I think that is vague enough for us to at least have a conversation around.
So just to be clear, there is no danger in us doing stuff just because the rules say that's what we should do. Our role on this committee is quasi-judicial. We are not here to represent the views of our residents. We are here to implement planning policy. And planning policy is crystal clear, and I do not feel there is debate. And I think this is probably one of the occasions where I would say there is clearly a need to not just have officers from planning, but also somebody from our legal team who could put paid to the fact. Actually, there doesn't. Yeah.
Agreed.
But I don't. I'm not a lawyer. My reading of it is that there is no grey area here, and I think that is the opinion of the officers as well. If we're not happy to hear that from officers, I think we need to hear it from legal. Can I ask that we defer this item until we can have somebody from legal?
Hang on, we're getting an awful lot of proposals coming up that haven't been seconded as yet.
Other people want
Yeah.
to speak.
Councillor Dower had her hand up, but she's not on my list. So are you coming in about the motion, or are you just want to be added to the list of speakers?
I would like to be added to the list of speakers.
Right, I'll
please.
put you on the list. So at the moment, we've got a motion. So far hasn't been seconded. Have we got a seconder? Not at the moment. Okay, let's hold that in abeyance for now. Okay, so the next person I've got on the list is Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Martin, are you speaking about 215?
Thank you. I'm speaking just generally, open up to discussion, and basically we've been asked to weigh up the benefits of, you know, the old building against the new building. So I just wanted to speak about that because it should be open to debate, because it's not cut and dried, because if the benefits of building a new building there outweigh pulling down the old one, then this application should go forward. It should be accepted. So I wanted to just talk about the benefits of pulling down the old building and putting a new one in its place. Sandbanks, I know some years ago, I don't know what it currently is, but it was voted the 4th highest estate value in the world. So it's quite prime property, and it's good to keep it that way. Yeah. Another benefit of pulling the old place down and getting this new one is we'll have a natural shoreline from the harbour, and it will support diverse marine life as well. So it's nice for people using the harbour. I think Poole Harbour, it's either the 1st or 2nd biggest harbour in the world, so it's quite well used. The new building is a way better energy rating, absolutely way better energy rating, which will save, which is saving the planet. That's really important. That benefits everybody publicly. The old building is nothing like the buildings on either side. It looks odd from the photographs. You can't actually see it from the road anyway. But the new buildings, I believe, 2 to the left of it, if you look at it from the road, 2 to the left are now modern buildings. There's some spare land to the right, which is obviously going to be built upon. And then there's a modern building to that side as well. So it just looks weird there. And we want to encourage wealth coming to that area. I think that's really important. You know, they've done well in life. You know, we should encourage them. We want wealthy people to live in our area, because that's good for the area. We want them to be able to build nice properties, and basically wealthy people don't want to live in a dilapidated old house, no matter what. You know, it's true. I wouldn't. Yeah, that's me.
But it's quite an odd remark.
Right, Adrian, I've got you on the list, but let's work through the list. It may be the discussion's a bit disjointed, but you know, I don't know what people want to say until they say it, by which time it's too late to know whether the debate's going in a logical order or not. So I've got Councillor Challoner next.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all aware of our role in this committee, and I don't think we need any kind of lectures from across the room. Thank you very much. And what I would say is that there is much in planning that is actually subjective. It is not always black and white, cut and dried. And in this instance, if we're going to refer to 215, the less than substantial harm weighed against the public benefit, adding to the character and appearance of an area which is offering a better sea defence, a property that is more in keeping with the area, that is more environmentally sound, that actually encourages a family to live there and not a crumbling ruin, as has been mentioned. And I actually think that based on that, on the views, the impact, the character, environmental standards, everything, I think it does meet PP27. And I would be quite happy to put forward a motion that actually that we go against the officer recommendation and approve this application. But I think at this stage, rather than me say that right now, there are enough people that want to speak on this matter. But I'll withhold that. But please prepared. I'm willing to go forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clements.
Chair, yeah, I've said before on this committee, I'm a huge defender of old historic buildings. I love old historic buildings, but not to the risk of being pig-headed and bloody-minded, because at the same time you need to be sensible and you need to be logical, and you need to think, you need to be modern as well, and you need to think about the future. And that place, currently as it is, will probably in not so long be crumbling in one way or another. I don't get it. I'm really sorry. I do understand, you know, that you have to always consider any substantial harm. Of course you do. But in this case, I really do think the substantial harm is so negligent that it doesn't really have any impact or any bearing. And it seems to me like a no-brainer. I mean, as Councillor Dower said, and Councillor Martin, you know, you've got the biodiversity there, you've got the wonderful seawall, you've got A rating, eco, mine's gone, energy, sorry, energy, and you know, environmentally more acceptable. So I would be inclined to agree with Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Councillor Dower.
Thank you. I'm just going to agree with everybody, everything everyone else has said. The existing building is energy rating F. The new one will be energy rating A, which is really good for the environment. It's very green, so that's great. The existing building is falling down. It's not going to be there much longer. It's dilapidated. It's not benefiting the area. Whereas the new construction, the new development is going to benefit the area because there'll be a beautiful seawall, which is already said, which is going to encourage diversity in our sea life. And we've got a great energy rating. And yeah, I'd be minded to actually go against the planning recommendation at this point too.
Councillor Chapman-Moore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to disagree with you, Joe. I don't think this is cut and dry either, and I can't believe I'm saying that. This whole less than substantial harm thing, I'm really struggling to see this sort of any substantial harm in this building being knocked down. I'm not buying it. It's not the first, you know. It's on the peninsula. It's like second or third. You know, like nobody remember who came third, do they, on anything? I just don't. I can't see it. And if we were to balance this up, I kind of, you know, like, you know, I have looked up the EPC rating. It is an F. You know, it's got the potential to be a D. You know, I just can't see the positives of keeping the building. I'm really struggling. I think that's about it, really.
Councillor Siddle.
Thank you. I just want us to be very careful. I know I said I think it is worth debate, and I think it is worth debate. And I think we know what we all probably feel about it. But Joe is not wrong that what we have to do is make sure that we have the balance correctly defined here. And so what would be interesting is if we could, all the things we've said, how many of them can we actually take into account when making our decision. Because yes, the seawall is fantastic, much better. There's no question about that. The property is better. The effect on the environment is better. All that. But how many of those are actually things that we are allowed to take into account when we make our decision? Because I know where my vote would be at this point, but I want to make sure that, as Joe has pointed out, that we are doing the right job that we're put here to do. So I'd like to hear from officers, or if we had anybody
I think you
legal
hit
in
the
the
nail
room
on the head
who
there,
could
Peter.
perhaps just give us a bit of advice.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with assessment of, gosh, that's really loud. Whether the harm is less substantial or whether there is sort of limited harm. That's the right wording for less than substantial.
Both sides agree that. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but both sides agree that there will be less than substantial harm. We're just disagreeing on the
actual level, yeah.
Yes, but in the eyes of the MPPF, we're talking about less than substantial harm.
So there's a judgment on where we are, and also a discussion about what the public benefits of approving this application would be. And I think that's where you're coming to in terms of what they can be. So the energy rating itself isn't, because that's a personal benefit, but having a more efficient house is beneficial publicly in terms of climate change. And I'm not quite sure about the seawall. For the flood defences? Yeah, so seawall has a largely private benefit, but limited public benefit in terms of some sea defence, potentially employment during construction and demolition. And so I can't remember what else I discussed. I mean, in terms of larger housing for rich people, I'm not sure we could really count that as a public benefit, unfortunately. But certainly we could impose a condition for heritage, a detailed heritage monitoring, recording during a demolition of buildings, so we're not completely losing the historic record of the building and details of its fabric.
Thank you. Everybody on the committee has spoken so far in this, except me. So I'm going to speak now. I know that doesn't stop other people coming back after. I know Councillor Challoner wants to. Again, I mean, I share an awful lot of what people are saying. I think it's a great pity that the sea defences has not been submitted as a separate application, because I suspect the outcome of that application would probably be non-controversial. I don't know anything about marine ecology and all that, but I suspect that might be a no-brainer. I don't know. That's not predetermining. So if that had been submitted separately, in one sense, I think it would make our decision easier. There's a lot about the application I like. The green credentials are fantastic. Talking about rich people moving in and housing, I mean, it's been quite clearly stated in the submission that the site is 3 times all the other surrounding houses. So we could be looking at asking for 3 houses on that site. I mean, we could have quite justifiably had an application for 3 on that site, which would have been 2 extra houses for the housing situation, which would have been a small good, a very small good. But then we come back to the MPPF and the heritage, and that's the sticking point with me. I can appreciate that you can't see it from the road. You can't see that much from the sea either. And how many people do go on the sea and would appreciate it? I mean, comparatively small numbers. But, you know, there's so much heritage we have lost and are losing. And I think it may be a bit of an exaggeration to say it's dilapidated and falling down, because I think I'm right in saying the applicants are living in it at the moment. So it can't be that bad. You know, I would have thought it was savable. So as you can tell, I'm still very unclear about how I would vote when it comes to the vote. So I hope any more subsequent discussion will help me. Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. I will go back to my statement previously, in so much as, on balance, when we start looking at the less than substantial harm, I feel that the overall benefit is there in terms of providing a family home, in terms of improving biodiversity. We've had all issues around trees dealt with, which is a positive, because that was probably the one stumbling block that I had when first looking at this particular application around that site. It was certainly a major concern. And I think, okay, if we might want to then condition some kind of logging of historical or architectural notes or points of reference. I don't suppose there'll be that many. I don't think someone's going to be very busy doing that. And I think that really this is one of those occasions where I think we should be moving forward and allowing this site to be developed. So you were right to point out you could have 3 houses on this site, and it's great that we're not having over density. I don't think another 2 properties on that site would do anything for the housing shortage, given that location and the costs involved. And
just to cut in, I didn't say that you wouldn't be with the trees as they are. I don't think you'd be able to fit them in anyway. So it would be a toss up between houses and trees in that situation.
Yeah, but having rambled on, I would like to motion that we actually go against the officer recommendation and we approve this application.
Okay, have I got a seconder for that? I have, Councillor Martin. Thank you.
Another question, if I may.
Okay, I know Councillor Salmon wants to speak as well.
Sorry, Joe, do you want to go in?
I just wanted to, I feel like a broken record here. We have to apply planning policy, and I think actually the officers have been incredibly clear with us when we were asking questions. This isn't one where there is any subjectivity. The only reason this application is in front of us now is because of the number of statements in support, not because of any balance. And I feel very uncomfortable with this committee making a decision that implies actually it's one rule for one group of applicants, but if you can get enough people to write in support, then we have a planning committee who will ignore officer recommendations without any reference to there being a tilted balance or anything like that, just because of the preferences of this committee. That sets a very dangerous precedent. Now, I think a better recommendation would be, as there seems to be some confusion for other members of this panel as to what the officer recommendation was and what the grey areas are within the National Policy Planning Framework, I think that we're going to have to push this application back to when we can have a member of legal sat on this panel, because I think some members of this committee will not hear it from planning officers. Maybe they will hear it from officers within the legal team. We've been given a clear recommendation here. You know, this should not be being debated in this way. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Thank you, Councillor Salmon. Councillor Sidaway.
Yeah, I just want to go back to 215, and that is the point we're debating. It should be weighed against the public benefits. So that is the balance. That is the weight that we need to apply to it. What I want to ask is, when we went through whether any of the points we could weigh up in that way, if we were to say that we wanted to overturn this decision, do you think those 3 points that we just discussed were sufficient reason to do so? Because that, for me, that's what we're coming down to. Do we have a valid reason? Because if we don't have a valid reason, we just prefer it, then I'm with Joe with that we do something different.
Zoe? Okay. So we have a sort of proposal to defer it. 1 or 2 people have been talking about that. We have got to move to grant, so we need to deal with that first. But bear in mind that there is also, I sense, quite a strong feeling for deferring. So I think we need to vote on the motion to grant first, and then depending on the outcome, maybe agree to defer it. Okay?
Can we just discuss that first? Because if you have the vote to overturn it, then I, for example, would like to overturn it. But I only want to overturn it if I know that legally it's the right thing to do. I don't want to say, yes, it's the right thing to do, and then be told later that it's not. So I think we do need some clarity. I'm not sure we need to defer it so much as get some clarity either within the room, and if we don't get it within the room, then we'll need to defer it. But we do need some clarity to know that we're not just going to be making the wrong decision. That's all I'm concerned about. I know exactly where my mind is, but I need to know where the facts are.
Yeah, carry on.
Can I just point out that I think we've focused a bit too much on paragraph 215, and there are other paragraphs that we haven't spoken about. Excuse me. And the tests in these paragraphs need to be met as well. So minimizing harm, so that's paragraph 208. Paragraph 202, which is great weight should be given to the conservation of heritage assets. 213, which is any harm or loss of the significance of a designated heritage asset needs clear and convincing justification. I think we all agree on our side that that's lacking. And paragraph, I just don't want to mangle the numbers, 209, which talks about the need to enhance or better reveal the significance of a heritage asset, and not to mention the pool local plan, which also asks for preservation of heritage assets and to justify any harm. So it's this justification and the minimization that is lacking. And after that, we need to apply the planning balance.
So, if one possibility is deferral to get A, legal advice, and B, for the case officer to outline, or somebody, case officer presumably, to outline actually what are the benefits of approve, if we were to approve this. We've heard about the disadvantages and the heritage asset. We haven't really heard about benefits. Although, I mean, obviously, members have talked about them and thought about them, but not no sort of expert view on it. We've got a motion seconded. Now, it could be that the proposer and seconder at least temporarily withdraw that so that we can talk and vote about deferral. But I'll let Councillor Martin speak first.
Yeah, basically the benefits, whichever way you look at it, whether you get legal advice or not, they're subjective. You know, it's not something that you can't measure it. It's something that's subjective. The other thing is if we do go ahead and allow this application, who's going to appeal it anyway? You know, it's only becomes that would be the time when you get legal involved.
Yeah, if it's approved, it wouldn't be appealed. It can't be appealed. It's only if it's refused.
Yeah.
That the applicant can appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, we're opening ourselves to judicial review. And if that went to judicial review, I think it would be found out that, as I said earlier, some of the requirements of the MPPF were not met. And it will be putting the conservation area at risk, in my opinion.
Councillor Challoner.
Just to come back on the list that we were just given by our conservation officer, there was nothing there that I heard that would make me want to change my suggestion or my motion. You know, the heritage asset is minimal. You know, the public benefit, I think, is much better. This is a property that's more in keeping with the area. It meets every criteria that we want a home to have, weighing in all the other environmental elements in the location as well. And there was just nothing that came out on that list that made me think that we shouldn't still be going ahead. If my seconder wants to withdraw and say we go for a deferral, that's fine. But I'm still prepared to put my motion forward to actually approve this application.
Still go ahead. Okay. So I think we've got to now put it to the vote, and we'll see the outcome, bearing in mind that if it's refused, we could decide to go for a deferral. I think I'm right in saying. We've got legal sitting here who has not been part of the debate, except right at the tail end. But if if the committee votes to refuse, then we can go for deferral, I think. I'm right in saying. Yes, I'm getting nods.
So,
Right. So,
Chair, I don't know if planning want to come in at this stage. So if the move to grant the application is approved, at what point will there be, I imagine there'll be standard conditions, etc. that would
Yeah,
need
so
to
we've
be-
got conditions, etc. And obviously we need to, for the record, state what
yeah,
the
yeah,
what the
because
public
obviously,
benefits are, etc. Yeah.
because it was recommended for refusal, the conditions have not been covered probably as fully as they would be if we accept it.
Yeah. So we've got we could discuss what conditions could be there, but we'd have to have that agreed by the chair post decision.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. So just to be clear, so the move is to grant the application and delegate the conditions to be agreed with the head of planning and operations in consultation with the chair and vice chair.
Yeah. Okay.
One point of clarification, it might help if we knew what reasons we were going to give for overturning, because we will have to give those reasons, won't we?
Yeah.
And I think if we knew that now, it might make the vote easier. It might make it easier. So if we, for example, if we went through those clauses that were just listed and said, yep, that one, we think we've clarified that one, we've done that one, we've done that one. But at the moment, I personally still feel it's too vague for me to vote in favour of it, even though that's what I want to do.
So, reasons. Councillor Salmon.
Chair, I'm a little concerned about what I've heard during the debate, specifically that it does not matter if we make a decision that goes against planning law because, oh well, nobody will be around to challenge that decision. That is a very cavalier attitude to have. You know, that is a very cavalier attitude to have. Can I please restate my original suggestion that where there is such confusion by members of this panel as to how to actually apply planning policy, that we have to discuss this with somebody from legal in the room to spell out what officers have already told us. Can we please simply move forward with that? I would ask that those who've proposed that we approve this application withdraw that motion and consider what their role is meant to be on this committee. And I know you may not like getting this lecture, but I have been incredibly worried by what I've heard on this committee. We do not ignore national planning policy, and we do not ignore it just because we do not think somebody will take us to court. That is not how we should act on this committee.
Yeah, thank you. Well said, Councillor Salmon. So I've already asked the proposer and seconder of the motion if they wish to withdraw, and they said they do not wish to withdraw it. So I think we've still got to go ahead on the vote to accept this proposal against officer recommendation. Okay?
Chair, just to be clear though, Councillor Sidaway has mentioned about reasons, and when you are overturning a decision, you do need to explain the reasons why.
So, reasons. Councillor Challoner.
Thank you, Chair. Well, going then to item 74 on the officer's report, which is the recommendation to refuse. The proposal by reason of the demolition of the existing cottage would result in the total loss of the non-designated heritage asset, causing significant harm to the Sandbanks Conservation Area. I disagree. I don't believe it does cause significant harm. And that, to me, is key to this point. It goes on to say, consequently, losing a positive building within the Sandbanks Conservation Area to a single dwelling of an unsympathetic design is not considered a heritage or public benefit. It's sympathetic to that location. I don't think you could argue otherwise. You know, every other house looks like that. And not denigrating a design, but every other house is of a similar style or modernised approach. So therefore, I would actually say that it doesn't cause harm to the conservation area because there are buildings that are sitting quite well within that location, and that is the point of my motion.
Any other reasons? Councillor Dower.
That the actual public benefits do outweigh the harm, because there's going to be improvement to the energy energy thing. The seawall is going to be improved, and I think that we need to add that in as well to the reasons.
I wonder if we ought to say something about the NPPF, that we feel these, I'm putting words in people's mouths, that the benefits outweigh that, I don't know.
I would agree. I actually
Yeah.
do feel that the benefits outweigh, the public benefits outweigh the harm in this location, in this item. And I do think that it is subjective and we are able to make that approach. And that's what I'd like to state.
Sorry, just clarify. Is it need to make in the statement there? You said there is no harm. Are we saying that that what members are saying? There's no less than significant harm.
Benefits outweigh
It's
the
just-
harm.
So there's two different tests. So if there's no harm, then there's no need to apply the public benefit test. But if there's less than significant harm, it's just less than what officers have presented, then we still need to apply the public benefit test. So I want to clarify which we're considering.
Yeah, I don't think we can say absolutely zero harm because there is some element of heritage asset listing applied to this particular property, but it is minimal.
So for those reasons, the motion, seconded motion, is that permission should be granted for this contrary to officer recommendation. So if you think that is the case, will you vote now, please?
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you think that is not what the decision should be, that we should refuse this application, vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4.
By my maths, that means nobody's abstained. So I've got the casting vote and I say we refuse.
So, just to be clear, the move to grant has not been carried.
No. And I've used my casting vote to say we refuse it.
Are we able to revisit the question that?
No. So, Chair, just to be clear, there is now no decision has been made.
But we did. Sorry, we
now
did
need
say
another
if
move.
we could still go and pass it on for legal advice.
We could. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we could
Yeah,
now
but I
still
think
go for deferral.
Yes.
Yes. So if someone wishes to propose deferral for advice, well, I'd have come in as well. So proposed by Councillor Salmon, seconded by Councillor Sideray. So,
and to be clear, this is to seek further legal advice.
Yes, and also benefits of the proposal. Yeah.
In the case of reasons for refusal, I think needs to be a lot more detailed. Sorry, more detailed balance and explanation, so we can, and whether we are straying across the line of the NPPF or not, which is
it's particularly that aspect. Yes, Councillor Salmon.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm proposing not only do we have legal advice, I would like when this is next discussed by committee, somebody like the fantastic Mr. Firth to be sat in the committee room to help answer members' questions, which I think is what
I will be requesting that as chair. Yes, definitely. I mean, this is a case I think we do need legal advice. Sometimes we don't, but this one I'm sure we do. That's the purpose of the deferral, after all. Yeah. Okay, so we've got a motion proposed and seconded that we defer, and particularly to get legal advice and clarification of benefits. If you wish to vote for that, please vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4.
If you wish not to vote for that, if you wish to oppose that, vote now. And if you wish to abstain, vote now.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That's right. So that is carried. So the proposal is deferred. Hopefully to come back as soon as possible. That the deferral won't take too long. Okay. Well over an hour and a half. I think we've given this thorough consideration. So thank you, everybody. And we'll take a 5-minute comfort break because we are now going on to a training session. And the live stream.